Let me introduce you. This is Baby's First Birthday. It's by Frederick Daniel Hardy. It was painted in 1877, and it's a typical Victorian genre painting. In fact, I suppose it's just what the Victorians wanted. They wanted a painting and they wanted a story, so they get more for their money that way. Hardy, with his brother George, actually formed part of a particular group of painters called the Cranbrook colony. They actually lived and worked in the village of Cranbrook down in Kent. They had the advantage of looking at cottages and people in a very, very rural, quite backward-looking setting, and the advantage of a railway line direct up to London to sell their paintings at the galleries. When school children come in, we actually often ask them, can they find the goose? It's a bit of misdirection, I'm afraid, because they're looking for a bird, and the goose is actually the iron on the table. It's a tailor's goose. And anybody that knows Macbeth will know the joke that comes from that. Here's a tailor that cooked his goose, but that's another story, and I'm not going into that now. When we look at the central issue of this painting, it's Baby's birthday. Must be a little girl. She's got pink ribbons. That's a typical little ploy, isn't it? And you might ask, why celebrate a first birthday with all this pomp and ceremony? I'll come to that in a minute. It was a milestone. Many children died early in Victorian times. So here's this child that survived a year. So it's a big do. And if you look at the table, there's a wonderful set of chinaware. The problem is every bit's different. They've probably collected it at fairs that have come through the town. If she worked in the big house up the road, maybe the woman in the house has given her odd bits of broken pottery that she's reused on the table. But it's there, her best china. Then we've got the cake itself in the middle. It's got a rather posh candle in it, probably a bit more than this family could really afford. So there's a bit of invention going on there. And I'll come back to the flag later if you don't mind, because I think that's a nice little touch for the end. On the floor are children's toys, a cap. There's even a house cat in there sitting on the chair waiting for his little snippet of food, I expect, and a threadbare carpet. We're looking at a Victorian household. Perhaps it's a piece of one of those Victorian beautiful lies. Everything about it is so wonderfully true that we expect family life to be like this. But the reality was that the little boy would probably work 12 hours a day, bird scaring. Mom would probably work in the big house. The older girl, or even the younger one, might be a little mother that has to look after the rest of the children while the rest of the family are out working. And then that nice little touch I mentioned earlier about the flag. It's a royal standard. Now, I'm sure that Frederick Daniel Hardy first meant it to be a sort of element of patriotism in the family. They support the Queen. But the nice little touch is that this painting was given to us, along with lots of others, in 1887, the Queen's Golden Jubilee. 50 years on the throne. And it's a nice little touch that binds it into the time in which the painting was actually given to us, although it was painted before the Golden Jubilee, we know that. This painting has been in the gallery for 119 years, and it represents, in a way, a piece of Victorian collecting. I mean, downstairs at the moment in the gallery, for those who are interested, here now in 2006, we have an exhibition of contemporary collecting, and here we have an example of contemporary collecting in Victorian times. So there's a link there, obviously, which is quite nice. Going back to this shelf over here, when I look at the shelf, I can see writing implements and a book. That means this family was literate. They could read, they could write. There's also, I'm not sure whether it's a fiddle or a viola. In the darkness, it's difficult to, we haven't got much to judge its size, but there's a stringed instrument. And then that reminds you of all those stories by Thomas Hardy, like Under the Greenwood Tree, when you have the town band, kind of ad hoc group of musicians. Is Dad one of these ad hoc group of musicians, or is it one of the girls, maybe? And having mentioned the girls, that brings me to the oldest daughter. Her dress is purple. There's like a little story even in that colour, purple. I mean, it was very, very expensive dye until 1869, when old Perkin, he discovered it purely by accident, trying to make artificial quinine. He discovered mauve or mauvine or the purple dye. He actually made a fortune out of it, this dye. But there she is in a purple dye. Even Punch made comments about the amount of purple there was around after 1869. But there we have a perfect example of the purple which was so popular in Victorian times. This painting is a piece of beautiful Victorian lies. We look at the picture and you have a wonderful schmaltzy story about a family birthday, which probably would never have happened. However, look into the picture and you can see elements of real history. The reality of the time is hidden inside the painting. We can see what life was really like, despite the rather idyllic and romantic view of the family. Which brings me, naturally, to this idea of how the Victorians presented themselves. We have a perfect example of Victorian values, where the family is at the centre of everything, and alongside the family is the idea of hard work. Yet, this is the picture they want us to see in what they would have viewed as a golden age. The unfortunate thing is that we know the truth.